brokerage. Effective immediately, your assets are frozen.
This is insane. I didn't do anything.
Then why were you moving the money at 2 a.m.?
The judge didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. In courtroom 4B, the air already felt like it had been drained out of the room, like the building itself understood what was about to happen. Daniel Hart stood behind his attorney at the front table, his hands flat on the polished wood, fingers spread as if he could steady himself with friction. His eyes kept drifting to one small detail, the red LED clock above the door, 9:12 a.m. Across from him, Rachel Hart sat perfectly upright, legs crossed, a pencil balanced between her fingers like a prop. Her makeup was flawless. Her expression was calm in a way that didn't match the situation, like she'd convinced herself composure could rewrite reality. The clerk shuffled paperwork. The bailiff took 2 steps back. The courtroom microphone picked up a small, accidental sound, someone's sleeve brushing the table, and it felt loud in the silence. Then the judge looked down at the emergency motion. "Counsel," he said, voice steady, "you're asking for an ex parte order freezing marital assets." Daniel felt his stomach tighten. His attorney, Lila Moreno, didn't flinch. "Yes, Your Honor. A temporary restraining order to prevent dissipation. We're asking for immediate relief." Rachel's attorney stood fast. "This is extreme," he said. "My client has done nothing unlawful. This is a marital dispute, not a criminal case." The judge lifted his gaze, slow, deliberate, and held it on Rachel. "Ms. Hart," he said, "are you currently moving funds out of joint accounts?" Rachel's smile arrived like a mask snapping into place. "No, Your Honor." Daniel didn't look at her. He looked at the exhibit binder, tabs labeled with dates, times, location pings, call logs, bank transfers. He listened to the judge say the sentence that would change everything in a single breath. Based on the evidence presented and the demonstrated risk of concealment and dissipation, the court grants the temporary restraining order. The judge's pen moved. "Effective immediately," he continued. "All accounts listed are restrained. No transfers, no liquidation, no sale of property. Assets are frozen pending further hearing." The words hung for half a second like they didn't belong in real life. Frozen, in 24 hours. Rachel's pencil slipped and tapped the table, a tiny sound that carried. Her attorney leaned in, whispering, suddenly urgent. Daniel didn't feel victorious. He felt hollow. Because the order wasn't a prize. It was a seatbelt. It was a lock on a door he hadn't known was already open. And if you're wondering how a court freezes a spouse's assets in a single day, how a husband goes from suspicion to a judge's signature before the next sunrise, it starts with a phone. Not a confession, not lipstick on a collar, a phone that told the truth in numbers and coordinates, long before anyone said the words out, loud. 2 nights earlier, Daniel was sitting alone on the living room couch, the house lit by the dim, bluish glow of the TV he wasn't really watching. The kind of late-night quiet that's supposed to feel peaceful. But in Daniel's house, quiet had started to feel like a warning. On the coffee table, his own phone buzzed once and went still. A routine notification, their family plan, monthly usage summary. Daniel almost ignored it. He'd never cared about data totals or minutes. But his thumb lingered, and he opened it without thinking, the way you open a cabinet you've opened 1,000 times, until one day something inside is different. There were the usual lines, his number, his kids' tablets, Rachel's phone. Then Daniel noticed one line that didn't fit. A spike, a cluster of calls and messages during a time Rachel had told him she was at a team dinner. Not just a lot of activity, repeated activity to the same unknown number. The number wasn't saved in their shared contacts. Daniel stared at it like it might blink. He told himself it was work. Then he saw the timestamps. 11:47 p.m., 12:12 a.m., 12:36 a.m., messages after midnight weren't impossible. But they weren't normal, either. Daniel's chest tightened, not with certainty, but with that first uncomfortable sensation you get when your brain spots a pattern before your heart is ready to admit it. He put the phone down. He tried to let it go, but once you notice a fracture, you start seeing where the wall has been patched before. Rachel's late meetings, Rachel's sudden gym routine, Rachel taking her phone into the bathroom and turning on the shower even when she wasn't bathing, steam as cover, noise as camouflage. Daniel had noticed those things and filed them away as stress. Now they returned with sharper edges. He picked up the phone again, clicked the number, no name, just digits. Daniel did what most people do when they don't want to be that person. He didn't confront her. He didn't explode. He searched the number, nothing obvious. So he did something quieter, more dangerous to his own peace. He started paying attention. Daniel Hart wasn't a jealous man by nature. He was a systems guy, an operations manager for a regional logistics company, the kind of person who solved problems with checklists and calm tone and steady follow-through. He believed in fixing things. That's what made the shift so disorienting. Because this didn't feel like a problem he could fix with effort. It felt like a problem that existed, whether he acknowledged it or not. Daniel and Rachel had been married for 11 years, 2 kids, a house in a neighborhood where people waved as they backed out of driveways, where kids left bikes in the yard without fear. From the outside, their life looked stable. Inside, the last year had become thin in places. Not dramatic fights, just absence. Rachel was physically present but emotionally elsewhere, like she was always half listening, always half leaving. When Daniel tried to talk about it, Rachel would respond with a line that sounded reasonable enough to end the conversation. "You're overthinking." "I'm just tired. Work is insane right now." And Daniel would let it end because he wanted to be the supportive husband, not the suspicious one. But the number on the phone didn't feel like overthinking. It felt like a clue that didn't care about his personality. The next day, Rachel moved through the kitchen with practiced normalness, pouring coffee, scrolling through her phone, asking Daniel if he could pick up groceries. Daniel watched her hands. The phone never left her grip. When a notification popped up, she tilted the screen slightly inward, away from him, a movement so small it would look like nothing to anyone else. To Daniel, it looked like intention. Rachel kissed the kids on their foreheads, grabbed her bag, and said, "I'll be late. We've got a client thing." Daniel nodded. "Okay," he said. Rachel walked out. The door clicked, and Daniel stood in the quiet, listening to the sound of her car pull away. Then he did something that felt wrong and necessary at the same time. He opened the family tablet, not because he wanted to spy, because they had set it up that way. Family sharing, synced calendars, shared photo storage for the kids. One of those modern conveniences that feels harmless until trust breaks. Daniel told himself he was only going to check the calendar, to confirm the client thing. But the calendar was empty. No event, no location. Just a blank evening. His stomach sank. Then he noticed something else, an alert at the top of the screen. Location services, Rachel's iPhone. Daniel's thumb hovered. He didn't press it. He stared at it for a long moment, arguing with himself in complete silence. Then he tapped. A map loaded. A dot appeared. And that dot was not in a restaurant district. It wasn't downtown. It wasn't anywhere near her office. It was at a place Daniel recognized instantly, because it was visible from the highway, a clean glass building with a modern sign that always looked too bright at night. A boutique hotel. Daniel felt heat rise behind his eyes. Not tears, adrenaline. His brain started trying to rescue him with alternate explanations. Maybe she's meeting a client there. Maybe it's a conference room. Maybe. Then the dot moved, not across town, into the parking structure, and then it stopped. Daniel's hand went cold on the tablet. At that moment, it wasn't about romance or betrayal yet. It was about being lied to with confidence, and something in Daniel snapped into clarity. He didn't need a dramatic confrontation, he needed to protect himself. Because lies don't just damage feelings, they often hide decisions. Money, decisions, legal decisions. And Daniel suddenly realized he didn't actually know what Rachel had been doing with their shared life, while he'd been trying to keep the peace. That night, Rachel came home with the smell of perfume that didn't belong to her usual routine. Lighter, sweeter, unfamiliar. Daniel noticed it immediately. So did his body. His stomach turned before his mind even finished forming the thought. Rachel breezed into the kitchen, cheerful in a way she hadn't been in months. "Long night," she said, smiling. "I'm exhausted." Daniel kept his voice calm. "How was the client thing?" Rachel didn't hesitate. "Fine, just boring." "Where was it?" Rachel's smile stayed, but something in her eyes shifted, like she was recalculating. "Downtown," she said, "at the place on Jefferson." Daniel nodded slowly. He knew she hadn't been there. He knew it because the map didn't care about Jefferson. Rachel poured herself, water, phone face down on the counter for once, as if that small gesture could prove innocence. Daniel watched her hands and realized another detail. Her ring had been turned inward, the diamond facing her palm. Some people do that casually, but Daniel had never seen Rachel do it before. He didn't confront her, not yet. He went to bed with the kind of quiet that doesn't bring sleep. And in the dark, he stared at the ceiling and felt a question forming in his chest, like a bruise. "How long?" The next morning, Daniel didn't go to work. He called in sick and sat at the kitchen table with a notebook and a cup of coffee that went cold before he drank it. He opened his banking app, joint checking, joint savings, mortgage payments scheduled. Everything looked normal. Then he checked their investment account, an account Daniel rarely looked at because Rachel managed it, insisting she was better with that stuff. He froze. There were pending transactions. Not completed yet, pending. A request to liquidate a portion of their shared holdings, a planned transfer, a large one. Daniel's heart started pounding. He clicked through details, hands shaking. The transfer was scheduled for the next day, and the destination account wasn't one he recognized. Daniel sat back hard in the chair. This wasn't just a marriage problem. This was an emergency, because if that transfer went through, the money could vanish into a new account, a new name, a new story. And Daniel knew enough to understand the brutal reality. Once money moves, getting it back isn't a conversation. It's a war. He needed legal help, immediately. By noon, Daniel was sitting in a small law office that smelled like paper and lemon cleaner. His attorney, Lila Marino, was in her late 30s, sharp eyes, calm voice, the kind of person who didn't react dramatically because she'd seen too many lives collapse in slow motion. Daniel laid it out in careful sentences, the unknown number, the location ping, the scheduled transfer. Lila listened without interrupting, then slid a legal pad toward him. "2 things," she said. 1, do not confront her until we decide strategy. 2, we move fast. Daniel swallowed. "Can a court stop her?" Lila nodded. "Sometimes, if we can show immediate risk of dissipation, that means she's moving assets to hide them. Courts can issue temporary restraining orders quickly, sometimes within a day, especially if there's documented urgency." Daniel's voice went tight. "What kind of proof?" Lila held up a finger. "Lawful proof, no hacking, no spyware, no breaking into accounts. What you have access to as an account holder and what we can obtain through legal process, subpoenas, court orders, that's what we use." Daniel nodded. Lila continued. Do you have anything that ties her to that unknown number? Anything that ties her to the transfer destination? Daniel hesitated. I have a map. I have a phone usage summary. I have the pending transaction. Lila exhaled slowly. Okay, she said. We can work with this. Then she said something that made Daniel's stomach drop again. If she suspects you're onto her, Lila added, she may accelerate. People move faster when they feel cornered. Daniel stared at the table because the truth was simple. Rachel had already started moving. That afternoon, Rachel texted Daniel from work. Hey, I might take the kids to my mom's this weekend. I need a break. Daniel read the message twice, a break or a cover, or a way to create distance while money disappears. Daniel's hands shook as he typed back. Sure, whatever you need. Lila told him to keep communication calm, neutral, no accusations. Daniel complied, but inside his mind was spinning. What else didn't he know? He started gathering what he could, again, not as a tutorial, not as a hack, but as preservation. Screenshots of the pending liquidation request, account statements showing recent activity, the family plan usage report, the location history from the shared family account. And then, almost by accident, Daniel stumbled into the detail that shifted everything. Rachel had used the family car the night of the client dinner. Their car's infotainment system stored recent paired devices and recent destinations. Daniel hadn't thought about it. He sat in the driveway, engine off, screen glowing dimly. Recent destination list. One location sat at the top, saved under a default label. Recent. He tapped it, and the address loaded. It was the hotel. Daniel's throat tightened, because this wasn't just one map dot that could be argued away. It was a second independent record, created by a system that didn't know how to lie. Daniel took a photo of the screen with his phone, timestamp visible. Then he sat in the driver's seat for a long moment, staring through the windshield, realizing something that felt both terrifying and clarifying. Rachel hadn't just been unfaithful. She had been building a parallel life, one that included moving money. Lila filed for divorce that same day, not because Daniel wanted a spectacle, because filing created the legal framework for restraint. Alongside it, Lila prepared an emergency motion, a request for a temporary restraining order to freeze marital assets. And in the supporting declaration, Daniel included the evidence that mattered most. 1. The pending liquidation and scheduled transfer to an unknown destination account. 2. The location data placing Rachel at a hotel during a time she claimed a work event. 3. The car's infotainment destination log confirming the same location. 4. The pattern of repeated contact with an unknown number at late hours. Lila wasn't claiming the phone data. Alone proved adultery as a crime or a public spectacle. She was making a more urgent legal argument. Rachel was acting deceptively. Rachel was preparing to move assets. And if the court didn't act immediately, the marital estate could be irreversibly depleted before the divorce process even began. Lila's words were direct. Your Honor, this court's authority is needed to preserve the status quo. Status quo, a phrase that sounds boring until you realize it's the difference between fair and vanished. That night, Daniel slept in fragments. Every time his phone buzzed, his body jolted. At 2:11 a.m., he checked it and saw a notification from the bank app. Not a transfer, a login. Someone had accessed the account. Daniel's hands went ice cold. He opened the app, logged in, and scanned. The pending transfer was still there. But the destination account details had changed slightly, different routing, like someone was adjusting the plan in real time. Daniel forwarded the notification to Lila. Lila responded within minutes. Good, that's urgency. We file first thing. Daniel stared at her message. Good. It felt wrong to call any of this good, but he understood what she meant. Courts move when danger is documented, and Rachel had just documented it herself. At 8:06 a.m., Daniel walked into the courthouse. The building was already humming with fluorescent energy, security scanners beeping, clerks moving in practiced patterns, shoes squeaking on tile. He held the exhibit binder like it weighed 50 pounds, not because of paper, because of what the paper represented. His marriage wasn't a story anymore, it was evidence. Lila filed the emergency motion, and because time mattered, she asked for an ex parte hearing, meaning the judge could hear it quickly without waiting for a full back and forth if the risk was immediate. That's how Daniel found himself in Courtroom 4B at 9:12 a.m., watching a judge read his life like a case file. That's how, less than 24 hours. After Daniel first saw the pending transfer, a court order would be signed, stamped, and served. Frozen. When the judge granted the order, Rachel's composure cracked, not into tears, but into sharpness. "This is ridiculous," she hissed under her breath, loud enough for Daniel to hear, but soft enough to feel like a private threat. Daniel didn't respond, because the courtroom wasn't the place where you win arguments, it's where you win leverage. The clerk issued certified copies. Lila moved fast, already on her phone to serve the order to the banks and brokerage. Rachel's attorney stood, face tight. "Your Honor, we request an expedited hearing to contest this." "Granted," the judge replied, "within 14 days. Then he looked at Rachel again. "Ms. Hart," he said, "do you understand that violating this order will carry consequences?" Rachel's smile was gone. "Yes," she said, but the way she said it wasn't acceptance. It was calculation, and Daniel realized something. Freezing assets didn't stop a person from being who they were, it just limited their options. Outside the courtroom, the hallway smelled like stale air and printer toner. Rachel walked past Daniel without looking at him, but as she passed, she whispered one sentence, soft, venomous, controlled. "You think you're smart." Daniel stood still. Lila touched his elbow. "Don't engage," she murmured. "Let the paper do the talking." Daniel nodded, because for years Rachel's words had shaped the reality in their home. Now the paper had power too. By 3:40 p.m. that same day, Daniel received the first confirmation from the bank, a polite email, a formal tone, cold, official language. "We have placed a temporary hold on the accounts pursuant to court order." Daniel read it twice, then he forwarded it to Lila. By evening, the brokerage confirmed the hold as well. No liquidation, no transfer, no disappearing. Rachel's plan had collided with the kind of authority she couldn't charm or threaten, and that's when the phone data became more than proof of an affair. It became the fuse that lit the financial truth hiding behind it, because with the freeze in place, Lila could dig deeper through formal discovery, and what she found reframed everything Daniel thought he knew. The major twist wasn't the hotel. It wasn't even the unknown number. It was the pattern of money. Once the court order locked the doors, the records began to reveal what had been happening quietly behind Daniel's back. Small transfers first, hundreds, then thousands, money labeled as subscriptions, business expenses, client gifts. Except Rachel didn't own a business, and the expenses were consistent. Same destination accounts, same timing, same careful spacing. Lila subpoenaed the destination bank information through the divorce case, and the name on over the receiving account wasn't a client, it wasn't a vendor, it was a man, Lucas Merritt, the same man whose number Daniel had been seeing in the phone records. Lucas wasn't a stranger either. He was someone Rachel had mentioned once, casually, months earlier. "A consultant," she'd said. "He's helping on a project." Daniel hadn't asked more, because when you trust someone, you don't interrogate their casual sentences. Now Daniel stared at the name and felt his skin go cold. This wasn't just emotional betrayal, this was the draining of a shared life. Rachel's contest hearing came 2 weeks later. This time the courtroom was fuller, more formal, more tension. Rachel arrived with a new outfit, new confidence, a different mask. Her attorney argued the freeze was unfair, that Daniel was using private data to harass her. Leela countered with the simplest reality. "Your Honor," she said, "this is not harassment. This is preservation. And the evidence shows active steps to transfer marital funds out of reach." She introduced the bank transfers. She introduced the brokerage liquidation request. She introduced the phone records showing repeated contact and location overlap during those transfers. She introduced a timeline, not dramatic, just undeniable. Rachel took the stand. She claimed Lucas was a friend and a financial advisor. Lila asked, "Is he licensed?" Rachel hesitated. "No," she admitted. Lila asked, "Were these funds disclosed to Mr. Hart?" Rachel's jaw tightened. "No." Lila asked, "Were these transfers made while you represented to your husband that finances were stable and shared?" Rachel's eyes flashed. "We don't need his permission for everything." Lila let the words sit. Then she asked the question that changed the temperature. "Ms. Hart," she said, "if these were innocent transfers, why were you attempting to liquidate joint holdings and move funds to an unknown account within 24 hours of being confronted with nothing but silence?" Rachel looked at the judge, then back at Lila. "I wasn't confronted," she said quickly. "I didn't know anything." Lila produced the 2:11 a.m. login notification. "The account was accessed," she said. "Routing details were modified that same night." Rachel's face tightened. The judge leaned forward, and in that lean, Daniel felt something shift, because the court wasn't hearing a marital argument anymore. It was hearing intent. The judge upheld the freeze, not just upheld it, expanded it. Additional accounts were restrained. A temporary injunction prohibited Rachel from taking out new lines of credit or selling personal property above a certain value. The home couldn't be refinanced. The vehicles couldn't be sold. Rachel's attorney objected. The judge overruled, and when the gavel fell this time, it sounded louder, not because it was louder, but because everyone understood what it meant. Rachel's options had narrowed. The story she was trying to control had been taken out of her hands. Outside the courthouse, Daniel sat in his car and stared at his steering wheel. He expected relief. Instead, he felt grief and anger and a strange, dull exhaustion, all stacked in his chest like heavy boxes. Because proving an affair doesn't feel like winning. It feels like confirming that you are living inside someone else's fiction. And it forces you to ask the question nobody wants to ask. How long would it have continued if you hadn't looked? If you've ever doubted your instincts because someone you love kept telling you you're crazy, paranoid, overthinking, remember this. People who are lying often sound calm. Truth often sounds messy. That doesn't make the truth less real. In the months that followed, the phone data became part of a larger case, file. Not because Daniel wanted revenge, because it established a timeline of deception tied to financial decisions. Rachel's affair wasn't the only secret. It was the cover story inside the cover story. While Daniel was trying to fix communication, Rachel had been moving assets, preparing exits, building buffers, protecting herself. And Lucas. Lucas wasn't just an affair partner, he was a recipient, a participant, maybe even a collaborator. That part would be argued in court, with lawyers and documents and definitions. But the essential truth was already clear. Rachel wasn't just leaving Daniel, she was trying to leave with the money. One evening, months later, Daniel was sitting at the same kitchen table where he used to help the kids with homework. The house was quieter now, in a different way, less tension, but also less warmth. His phone buzzed, a message from Lila. Account tracing complete. The court will likely order restitution credits, in equitable distribution. Daniel read it, then set the phone down. In the next room, his son laughed at something on a cartoon, a bright sound that didn't know how fragile adult life could be. Daniel stared at the family photos on the wall. He realized something that surprised him. The most powerful part of the story wasn't the order. It wasn't the freeze. It wasn't even the evidence. It was the moment Daniel stopped negotiating with a lie. Because once you stop negotiating with a lie, the lie loses oxygen. And that's what phone data did. It removed the ability to rewrite the night. Numbers don't care about tone. Coordinates don't care about charm. Timestamps don't care about excuses. They just sit there, waiting for someone to look. Rachel eventually reached a settlement, and not because she wanted peace, because the paper trail had corners she couldn't escape. The court maintained restraints until assets were divided. Transfers to Lucas were addressed as dissipation claims. Daniel wasn't made whole emotionally, no judge can do that, but he wasn't erased financially either. And in a strange way, the freeze did one other thing. It forced honesty. Not emotional honesty, not apologies. Legal honesty. The kind that shows up in statements, disclosures, and court orders that can't be gaslit. Daniel didn't celebrate that either, but he understood its value. Because when someone is willing to lie to your face and move money in the same breath, the fastest mercy you can sometimes get is a clear boundary drawn by the court. The story ends where it began, with a judge's signature, with a deadline that arrived faster than anyone expected. Within 24 hours, Rachel's plans stopped moving, not because she suddenly found a conscience, because the system finally moved faster than her secrecy. And for Daniel, that speed mattered, because in divorce, time is often the difference between "we'll sort it out" and "it's gone." So if you take anything from this, let it be this. Sometimes the biggest betrayal isn't the affair. It's the quiet decisions made around it, the hidden transfers, the secret exits, the way someone can smile at breakfast while planning to empty the life you built together. And if you've ever been in that position, if you've ever felt your reality slipping and wondered whether you're imagining it, ask yourself one question. If the truth were visible in plain data, would you want to see it? Or would you rather keep the peace that's built on a lie? Because Daniel thought he wanted peace, until peace started costing him everything.